Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and I'm back to continue working on Le Romantique. And today, or at least in this video, we're going to complete page 4 and 5. 4 and 5 are going to be exact copies, so I'm actually only going to do it once, but you guys will need to do it a second time for page 5. So it's exact, it's not even a mirror copy, so all the flaps are on the top or the bottom. And all the design papers are even going to be an exact copy. So I didn't really feel like I needed to do 2 of these in a row, page 4 and 5, because there's actually no pages separating them. You'll just complete 4 and then you'll go on to page 5 and do the exact same thing. So there's 2 main flaps in the closed position for page 4 and 5. And it's 7 by 3.5, 7 by 3.5. Across the 3.5 inch side, score a 1/2 inch. So you're going to have a flap. And it's going to look a little bit like an envelope or a policy envelope when you're done. And then the bottom one is 7.5 by 7. And then on the 7.5 inch side, you're going to score a 1/2 inch. So you have a finished 7. Let me double check that. Oop, I take it back. My numbers are wrong. Let me fix it. It is 6.5 by 7. 6.5 by 7, you're going to score a 1/2 inch on the 6.5 inch side, and you'll have a finished panel of 6 by 7. 6 by 7. I need to change that. So I don't keep making that mistake. So it's 6.5. 7 by 6.5. There we go. All right. Back to, okay, so these are a little bit inset from the edges of the paper, and I'm actually going to use 2 designer strips on either side, and these are a 1/2 inch wide, so there's going to be 1 on each side. So because I'm doing that, I want to spend a little more time getting these centered instead of eyeballing it. So what I've done is I found the center mark of the 7 inches, so there's 3.5, and then the center mark across the 8-inch pocket, which is at 4. And I'm just going to line these 2 tick marks up. And once I center either the top or bottom, then I'll do the opposite side off the installation. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to sit down and get started. And I think I'm going to install the bottom one and then I'll center the top one off of it. But I don't think it really matters. This is, I erased my page number because the strip is actually going to go right here and part of my note was exposed, so I erased it. But I do know this is my spine side. But like I said, these are up and down flaps, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not trying to work away from or toward either side. Right now, I just want to have this centered. Okay, I'm not going to burnish that in just yet. I'm going to put this, lay this one down and see if it's lining up nicely. And it's actually, perfect, lined up perfectly. So I'm going to lay it down. Well, actually, I should press it into place and then get this piece in. And so now this one, I'm just going to line off the existing installation. Sorry, a little too much coffee this morning. I'm shaking. Too much caffeine. Okay. I'm not ready to press it into place. I want to make sure both sides are lining up. There we go. Okay, so there's our top and bottom. So again, this is 3.5 by 7, 6.5 by 7. 7 is the width, okay? So those are in. So these little strips are going to come right here and they're going to partially cover that hinge. And the idea is, because I want that nice finished look right there. Okay, so that's going to go on either side. But I'm not ready to install it just yet. But I am going to show you what my plan is. So this is going to be the internal page, designer paper. That goes like that. Here is the large flap, and I'm still trying to decide what to do for the small flap. That is one choice, and if I did this, because it's fair, I was going to use some sort of a little embellishment tab or something like that. So that's one option. And then we could go dark. So I'm kind of going back and forth. Now remember, there's going to be two of these side by side, so let's look at it that way. Even though I'm not going to construct it right now, we can just lay the papers in and see what it looks like. So this is page 4. Here's page 5. So we know that goes. Here's my other strip. This gets laid down like so. And then on top, here it is. Sorry, we'll have this flap. And the reason I'm doing this is because I know they're going to be open together. I want to make sure it's not too busy. That's one. Here's this piece. And right now, so we have this option or this option. I'm kind of going back and forth on what to do. That's the all black option. And the pearl option. I think I'm going to go with the pearl with a plan to put some sort of a medallion on top to break it up a little bit. Let's do that. And that's my last option. Not crazy about it. All these can still be used, but they can be used on the flip side. So I think this is what our finished closed position is going to look like. And again, whatever we do on page 4, we're going to do on page 5. So just once you get one done, you can completely replicate it. I'm going to set all those pieces aside and then get page 4 front and center again. Yeah. That's what I like. Okay, now I think I've got that mostly planned. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and get these strips in because they're kind of floating around and I don't want to mislay them. And I want them to both be going the same direction. So I was just looking at that real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and lay those down. And I know no magnet's going to go under it, so it's okay, right? I don't have to worry about magnet placement. I just had a panic attack. I thought I forget to hit the record button, but it's going. Okay. I'm going to turn it over and do the other side. And I've already inked these edges. Something to think about. You know what? One of these is a little longer than the others. I'm going to lift it and trim it. Maybe. There we go. Now it looks even. I know it wasn't very much, but I think it's those details that really bring your book together and make it look so finished and polished in the end. So that's kind of my thing. Okay, now I know this is going to go here and this is going to go here, but I'm not ready to lay them down. Why not? Because I haven't figured out my magnet yet. And what I think I'm going to do... Hello, Nala. My little puppy dog came in to see me. She's such a sweetie. Okay, I think I'm just double checking to make sure everything's trimmed, and this needs to come down just a little. Let's double check that again. And that looks still very, I need my, I'll put my contrast sheet in here. It's very hard to see the edges. It was hard to see, but it wasn't square. And now it is. So I think there's going to be a magnet here and a magnet here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to place the top one because I want to make sure it's far enough down the edge. And then when I do, I also need to make sure there's enough overlap on this side. Okay. I might have to shift that. That might not be too... Yeah, that's gonna have to move up a little. Now I remember why I had this originally at 7 inches, because I wanted more overlap. And then I redesigned it, and the reason was I was running out of paper, and I knew 6 inches I could use one sheet cut in half. So there's a trade-off. There is a trade-off. So I'm going to think about this for a second. I've got some... I've got some swing tabs. Unfortunately, they're not going the right direction. It would work if I flipped it this way. Which is a consideration, and then we would swing the tab and this would come down. So that's something to think about. Let me see if I have two. I do. I have 2 top down. So let's look at that real quick. I don't usually do swing tabs, but let's look and see what it looks like when we lay the paper in and add the swing tab if we're still happy with the outcome. I like it. I think that's what we'll do. So there's 2 of these in the chipboards, and they're very similar. So I'm going to put one on 4 and one on 5. And I'm going to choose this one to go on 5 so that it's looking toward page 2. It's a very small detail, but that's how I'm going to do it. So this will be the page 4 one. Okay, so I need to locate some brads now. So it's different. Like I said, I don't do, oh, let's see, we have another option. We have these 2 as well. Oh, I'm actually using 2 DCEs. I forgot to mention that. And that's why I have a duplicate swing tab. But we could do the darker version. Not sure I like it any better. Sorry for all the shuffling, but I'm just going through what my options are. And I'm really liking these 2 the best. So the last idea would be to use a button. And I'm trying to see if I can actually get it to swing around. So if I had it installed here, can I get enough of a grab and still have it swing to get out of the way? And we could, so that's the last option, is a button. Well, and of course we don't even have to have it swing. We could actually hide a magnet behind the button. Oh, design decisions, right? You guys want to know how I do it? This is how I do it. I struggle and go back and forth and all over the place. Kind of like the button, but it also kind of disappears, so I might reserve those for the spine. Still deciding. Okay. All right, so I think I'm going to go with the swing tab. So, so now I just have to decide where I'm going to place it. This little strip, the top of the closure, really was too small for a photo anyway, so I don't feel bad about putting a hole in it and putting a tab where you can't put anything on top of it. So I just know it needs to be clear. I kind of like it high up, so I think I'm gonna put it on that third row of pearls. And I'm gonna slide that out right now and give myself a little reference line. So, oops, that didn't happen, did it? My lead is gone. So it's about midway down. Okay, I'm gonna hold it in place down here, slide it out, and then I'm gonna put my reference line. So I'm gonna put a hole right there. There's my center line that I had left from when I installed the flap. So that's where I'm going to install my hole. And hang tight, I gotta go get a brad. Okay, I'm back. I got my hole punch, and this is a small hole punch. And I should probably do a test and make sure the brad won't fall through it. That wouldn't be a good thing, would it? I just need a little piece of paper. Let's do a quick test. If it's too big, then I'm going to use an owl to punch it. Although the problem is I don't know where it is. It's not handy. So it fits. Okay, so it's not going to fall through, which is a good news. Now I need to also test and make sure it's not going to fall through. And it does. So I am going to need a bigger head. So hang on. I got to go do some digging to find a brad. Okay, I had to dig around in my stash, and I had tried this brad. It was a little too small, and then I found one with a little bit larger head. Just give you a look at it. And tested to make sure it's not going to slip through the hole on the chipboard, and it doesn't. So I think we're ready to lay it down. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is I punched a hole in a piece of scratch paper, and I'll do it again. Make sure that my hole punch isn't too large and that the head doesn't slip through here, and it doesn't. So I'm going to use my hole punch. If you don't have a small hole punch, you can use an owl or, you know, just something with a sharp point to push through the end. Hopefully it's going to reach, but I'll find out in a second. There it is, and it does. It's awkward as all get out, but there we go, that's in. All right, so Now I can lay this down, and then I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to mark it with a pencil. And now I know where to punch this. Okay, we're going to line them up, and hopefully everything looks good. Left to right. Up and down. And it does. It's not perfect, but it's got a big enough hole that it's going to work just fine. So let's ink this and get it laid down. And let's do a little housekeeping. I've got too much junk laying around. Too much stuff I'm not going to use. Okay, need to ink it. One thing to note, I notice when I'm using a cream as a base, I wind up inking further into my paper. I think you need to get, especially if it's a light colored paper like this, to get more dimension out of it, where it's not really, doesn't really seem to be the case when you're using black. Okay. Okay, looks good. And I just was thinking about it, and I don't know, I don't think I've done a tutorial with the swing tap, so this might be my first. And you can punch both holes at the same time, but mine is so thin, it's really hard to get 2 layers through, so I just went ahead and did them separately, 1 layer at a time. Okay, it's a little housekeeping here. Okay, my bone folder. Press that all into place. Okay, that's good. Now, we decided this was for page 4. I'm going to show you how it's going to work. So it's going to work just like so. So that's going to hold it in place. So just wanted to make sure that was still where I was expecting. So I'm going to thread it through my chipboard, then I'm going to thread it through the paper and open up the brad on the reverse side, which is always harder than I think it should be. So, and here's my owl. If I needed to do that instead, I had a real thin owl that I could have used. Okay, we just want to make sure this gets laid down flat. And we're going to lay some tape over it to soften the edges so it doesn't try to poke through the paper on the reverse side. Okay. And I'm using double-sided tape, but it doesn't have to be. You could use any tape just to make sure that these edges aren't sharp and sticking out. Okay, that's looking good. Let's get some tape over that. And there you have it. That's how our swing tab is going to work. Looks good. Let's get the centerpiece in now that I know I don't have to have a magnet. So again, I just want to remind you that everything we do here, we're doing exactly the same for page 5. I am not going to repeat the video. So once we finish page 4, you just replicate it. Sorry, I was just double checking to make sure I'd actually inked it. Okay, now we're ready for this piece. It's going to go here, and I need to ink it. Okay, now we decide what's up and what's down. I think I like that the best. It's going to close like this, so let's look at it in its entirety. So that's actually the right orientation, and I think it looks the best, although it's very hard to tell. I had to actually look at the flip side to know which side was up. So that's what we're going with. And I love patterns like that where you can use it in any direction. It makes using the scraps a lot easier. It's always a good idea to think about how you're cutting through your pattern if it's directional, so that you can use your scraps. If all your scraps are vertical orientation, you need to plan sort of your flaps around that. And when you're working with a DCE where you don't get a whole pack of patterns and solids, which usually you can turn any way you want, it's even more important to think that through. Okay, that is our finished closed position, page 4. And now we need to work on covering these 2 flaps. So before I move ahead, I'm going to take a break, or you guys are going to take a break with me, and we're going to talk about something. So here I am. The way I've done the album is I kind of designed it from the outside in. So page 4 and 5 are my last pages to finish. And I'm down to, everything so far has been planned. So what I want to do before I finish covering these is I want to think about whether or not I want to squeeze another flap into this design based on how much paper I have left over. So for this project, I used 2 DCEs. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have about 12 full 12 by 12. So each DCE comes with 24 sheets. So I've used 1.5 so far. I have not covered my inserts. So I have 4 inserts, 2 sides each, and all I've done so far is put a strip on them. So if I covered both of those back to back, that would be 8 sheets. That would leave me with 4 full sheets that I can use to make inserts, other tuck spots, or I can add an additional flap here. And I'm kind of thinking I might want to do that. So I'm going to take a break for a minute and make a decision about that, and then you guys are going to get to see what I've decided. If I'm going to add an additional feature in here that might take up another 12 by 12 between the 2 pages. So let me do a little bit of planning. I'll be right back. Okay, I did some planning and I have enough paper to add one more flap. So that's what we're gonna do. And I'm just double checking everything. Okay, so we've got, so far this is what's installed. So I wanna add another flap behind this one. And since I've already laid this mat down, I can't put the hinge underneath it, but I can apply the hinge to this side and it'll get covered on the other side, like so. So you'll have a double flap. Okay, so this is 5.5, no, double check. 5.5 by 7, 5.5 by 7. But because it's going to be laying flush with this and it's going to be so tight, I'm actually going to take a sliver off so that no matter what, it is completely hidden behind this flap. So when I take a sliver off, it's going to be across the width, okay? So right now it's 7 inches wide. I'm going to make it a little shallower. Let's go ahead and take 1/8 of an inch off. Okay. And then you can see it's inset on both sides. So I'm just going to center it and apply it directly to this side, just below the score line. And usually, again, I've mentioned this, but I need some housekeeping here because I can't find anything. Most of this planning happens off camera, but you guys have asked me, lots of you have asked me how I design, what's the process, and this is part of it, where you kind of design a page with the simple flap mechanisms, and then you lay in your biggest pieces of paper and then go back and see, well, what's left and can I add some more features? So remember to install this. I'm going to turn it around so I can see the score line, maybe. Not to interfere with the hinge here. So it needs to be above that score line. That looks good. Now I'm going to close it to make sure it's going to close, and it does. It's a little puffy, but I'm going to burnish that into place. All right. Okay, so now we have an extra flap. Okay, and that's how it's going to close. All right. Okay, that's in. So here is what I'm planning for the larger piece, and I need to take something off both sides. 7/8. Let's see how that fits. I'm just testing that it still wants to lay flat, making sure that that designer piece that I put in there is far enough away from the hinge, and it seems like it is. So I'm going to ink it and we're going to lay it down. We're just a few sheets away from being done here. You know what, it's a little tight. I'm going to take a little more off. Since we have this double fold here, I just don't want to make it any more crowded than it already is. Okay, that's in. So now we need to plan these two. So here's what I've trimmed out for this. And then I think I want this here. But I'm just going to take a look at it because I can flip it, right? I can also do that or that. And then if I did that, this is what this would look like. And I don't like that look. So I think I'm going to use the flowers on the inside. And it needs to come down 7. I think that's it. Yep. All right. So I don't do brads very often, and I'm going to tell you, I already learned something with this installation that I'll share with you that may change how you decide to do it. So if you want to use the magnet, then I would suggest that this the outer panel needs to be at least a 1/2 inch longer, so you've got enough overlap between that and this to place a magnet without exposing it. So that's one thing you could do. The other thing is, if you're gonna do what I did with the brad, which I like it, but what I've realized is I placed it probably a little too high. Even though aesthetically I like the way it looks, I think the fastener would work better if the brad was actually closer to this panel. So right now it gets a little bit of a bubble, but I think if this was located here, if, for example, the brad was here, you can already see it's holding it down better because the brad is actually closer to the flap. So if I had it to do again, I'd probably move that down, but I don't want to waste my paper, and I'm actually happy with the way it looks, but it does bubble up a little, just so you know. It's not going to come apart, but if you wanted that to lay a little flatter, then I would recommend the placement of the brad maybe a 1/2 inch up from here, or turn, this is the other way I've seen it done, is take whatever your chipboard is, lay it down on its side because it has to clear, and then you can use that as your reference point. And here's what I mean is, if you go any lower, then you turn, and it still can't open the pocket. So it has to be at least high enough that when you swing it to the side, the flap will clear. And hopefully that made some sense, but okay, so here's our last one. And again, I'm not going to repeat this for page 5. It is exactly the same design. You don't have to do it that way, but I mirrored everything. So all the designer paper layout has been done. What's been done on page 4 is what you're going to do on page 5. And I've already trimmed out my pieces for page 5, so I know there's enough paper to go around. Did I tell you the size of this flap? I think I did, but I'm going to measure it again. So it's a little bit less than 7, and it's 5.5. Is that right? I'm stalling, sorry. Yeah, 5.5, and I think I mentioned it, but 5.5 by 7. Make it a little bit smaller so that it completely fits inside the overlay. Okay, that's that. Now I need to take off, looks like about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to give that a shot, and then we're going to test it. That looks good, so I'm going to ink it and lay it down. I'm going to close it up, and then we're going to walk through the whole design again. And then again, you're going to repeat it for page 5. And I'm going to go do page 5 offline. So the next time we get together, we will install the pages. Actually, I think what I want to do is embellish the cover, finish the cover and spine, and then install the pages. I'm not sure. I am going back and forth, but those will be the 2 things left to do. And I go back and forth because, well, probably I'll do the page installs, and then that way the book will stand up a little and not fall over on itself as we're covering it. And I like to do the embellishment to the outside last because of the, wear and tear. So we'll do a page installs, then we'll do the cover and spine, and then I'll be finished. So I am going to embellish this album. I am not going to do a video for it. It takes way too long to do the videos where I do that. So you're going to have to go back to the walkthrough to look for little details for where I've added embellishment. So here is our, I'm going to clear the space so we can see. Actually, still need one more piece. One more piece and then we're done. Okay, and this fits. So if you consider yourself a pretty advanced album maker, you really don't need to go through the tutorials. I cover everything in the walkthrough, but also I try to go through the page design in the last 3 or 4 minutes of the video. So you can always skip ahead if you don't feel like you need this level of instruction. Ah, I almost dropped it on my tape. Needs to be trimmed down. It's too wide. That should do it. Better. Much better. Of course, I got glue on my trimmer, but that's part of it. Okay, so that's in. Now we're actually officially finished. Okay, there is our finished page 4. And again, you can have the same thing on page 5 with the exception of a different swing tab. Set those aside. So you swing that, this is going to drop down, this drops down again, this folds up, and then you have all this photo space in here. So I'm loving it. So I didn't do this, but here's another thing you could add. You could actually put a pocket here to have a tuck spot if you wanted. I didn't do that because I've done enough on this album. I'm ready to move on. Okay, so that's it for page 4 and 5, even though I'm only going to show you how to build it once. And the next time we get back together, we'll be working on the cover, spine, and page installation. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This is Daphne from Scrap and Create. If you're new to the channel, take a minute and subscribe, and be sure to share with anybody. All our tutorials are free. They'll always be free. There's no plan to take them down unless YouTube changes their policy. So if you start an album, I guarantee that video will be there for you to finish the album. Again, subscribe, like, and share. We appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you get a chance or need any of these supplies, click the Show More button and you'll see the detailed material list as well as a cut list and links to our shop for these products. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.